Hey y'all, good to be with you today, and I hope you've just been walking in His blessing, maybe working out a little bit of that patience stuff and things that we've been talking about. And we're going to continue on in Romans chapter 8, look at some more kind of blessings that God has for us. We're going to start in a really popular verse that you probably know and have heard spoken a lot. We're going to read Romans 8, 28 through 30. It says, and we know that in all things, now he's been talking about suffering and hardship. In all things, even in the hard times, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. For those God foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And those He predestined, He also called. Those He called, He also justified. And those He justified, He also glorified. It's a great promise of kind of succession of what happens in God's calling in our lives. And it ends well. But the reality is you've got to go back to the first verse, that God works good for two things: for those who love Him and those who are called according to His purpose. That God's not just some magic genie that just does good things because I say I'm a Christian, but it's because I'm following after Him, because I'm called according to His purpose, according to what He has created me for. You know, calling is an issue that maybe a lot of us struggle with. I remember my dad, before he passed away at probably 55, 56, with only a year or two left in his life, although he didn't know that then. I remember him sitting in the living room I was there, and a group of like 18, 19-year-old, just kind of out of high school or senior high school boys. And we were talking about calling, and my dad, who'd been extremely successful, said, I'm 56, and I don't even know what God wants me to do with my life. And now that was liberating to an 18-year-old, but to a 56-year-old, that's a stressful thing. It's a frustrating thing to not have clarity on calling. But calling doesn't have to be some mystical thing. It can be just the reality of knowing that God's anointed you to bless around you. Calling becomes clear when we see, what does God bless that I'm doing? What does God give me better abilities to do and care for others? And if you're still unclear, a really simple calling comes out of these verses. He says he blesses those who've been called according to His purpose. What does that look like? Those God foreknew, He also predestined to what? What is it? What does it look like? To be conformed to the image of His Son. Our calling is to look like Jesus, is to act like Jesus, is to tie it back to the art of blessing, is that we're blessed to be a blessing. That's what our calling is. Wherever you're at, it doesn't have to be in a secular position or in a ministry position. I'm called to be a blessing to other people. I'm called to be Jesus to the people that are around me. And if I want to walk in His will and I want to walk in His grace, then I've got to learn how to do that in good times and in bad, to be a good representation of Jesus to those around me. Your lifelong calling might be hard to discern, but seasons of calling can be a lot easier. God, what are you calling me to do in this season of my life? What do you have before me? How can I better bless those that you've placed me around? How can I better be there for the family that you've given me, for the relationships that you've placed me in? And how can I show them Jesus and what He does in our lives? Even if you're unclear, I'd encourage you in every season, go after all that Jesus has for you, all the ways that you can bless those around you, all the ways that you can represent Him to your friends, to your family. And I think you'd see some amazing results. That when you put your whole heart into going after what God has, into being more like Him, amazing things begin to happen. Have a blessed week.